Everybody, it is Wednesday, October 2nd. This is a special meeting of the Darien Board of Education Curriculum Committee. Our next meeting is scheduled for November 4th at 8 a.m. Because we had to cancel our September meeting, this is a compilation of both our regular September and October meetings. So here we go. I'll turn it over to Amy.
Thank you. I'm not sure, Ms. Farron, if you want to talk first.
Sorry.
The cadence of the
Yep,
meetings.
we'll do the first agenda item is reviewing the meeting schedule. It's on the first page of our packet. We will continue with the monthly meetings unless anybody has any objections. No, I think there's still a lot to talk about, and I think it's well worth the monthly meetings. Does that work? Okay.
And I believe there may be a conflict with the November 4th meeting because of the use of this room in the election.
Oh, is that right?
So
Okay.
we may need to just talk, and if we need to do that offline, we can.
Okay, we can look to reschedule that one maybe the week prior.
Okay.
Sarah, sorry, just one clarification.
Yeah.
So we're not sticking to a set day, like a first, like Thursday. These change days a little bit. Like November 4th is a Monday, December 4th is a Thursday. Okay, so we're going by dates, not by every 4 weeks.
I don't have it in front of me, but I thought it was fairly.
It's fairly consistent, as in like the first week.
I think Election Day put a wrench into the November date.
Okay, so we're trying to stick to Wednesdays and we just shifted
Yeah.
that. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're all Wednesdays except for that November date. Okay.
Okay. Okay, so first I want to just thank the team around the table for their work throughout the summer. I know this is a lengthy meeting, but when we think about the investment in curriculum and professional learning, especially as we approach budget season, it's really important to highlight the good work in teaching and learning that takes place over the summer to set us up for a successful, rigorous, challenging, and exciting school year for our students. So we'll start today with an update on just that. Hopefully through our comments, you'll hear remarks that reference our core values, not only for our students, but in the work of the adult learners within the school system, and that the work of our curriculum and instruction and professional learning is reflective of the mission and vision of the school system. One of the things that we're always talking about at the table around when we're talking about curriculum and instruction in these meetings is also assessment and professional learning. So one of the things that I often say is we can't disconnect curriculum, instruction, assessment, and professional learning. All of those things have to be connected in our work. So you'll hear that in our remarks as well. One of the focus areas of our work this past year is to strengthen our onboarding system and our orientation to Darien Public Schools. So typically this has been called new teacher orientation. We felt really strongly that we would call this welcome and orientation instead, because many of the staff members that join our system are either not new to education, they're coming from experiences in other settings, graduate school and other school districts, et cetera. But we want to make sure that everyone has a very supported start. One of the things that we do is also make sure that we're not focusing on those things that have been typical when for example, and probably most people around the table were oriented to a school district was, how do you find the copy machine? And where's the student handbook? And what about student discipline? All of those things are important, but they're operational. And so I read something recently, like if you want to really help people understand the big picture, start with the big picture and story, not those little details, because that's what they're going to walk away and remember. So we started with envisioning our school year. We started with, of course, our vision of the graduate, and we talked about how that applies to our student learners and the adult learners as well. They're aware of the district priorities as reflected in the board goals and the strategic plan. We, of course, made sure that they had tech support. That is that operational thing. Our IT department did an excellent job of making sure everybody was up and running right away. We made an intentional shift this year to talk about UVD, because we want to make sure that everybody understands how our curriculum is written, because with understanding by design, we are ensuring that everybody understands the connection between curriculum and instruction and that backwards planning. They had time with their grade levels and department chairs to go over scope and sequence. We did talk about SEL and setting up a healthy classroom environment. Ms. Sion did a brief piece about HR nuts and bolts. Dr. McCarthy and Ms. Klein did a piece on special education to support all educators and related service providers. And then we talked really importantly about high quality teaching and learning and what we would expect to see in classrooms throughout Darien Public Schools. So I'll have a brief update now about the work that happened in each of the department areas. And with literacy, as you know, we have a K-3 literacy update to follow where we'll go into much greater depth.
Yeah.
I'm actually going to skip these slides because this information is
Julie,
repeated in the literature.
Julie, could you turn your mic on?
Excuse me, sorry. I'm going to skip over these slides because they are repeated in the effort being brief. Math updates at the elementary level. We've expanded our working with building thinking classrooms and promoting the vision of a graduate, getting students to really think and be strategic. We've continued to focus on building fact fluency. Again, being strategic and sharing their thinking, which is mathematical reasoning versus memorization. And we have embedded Smarter Balance interim assessments within key units in grades 3 through 5 and developed guidelines for implementation and analysis. So that was our summer work.
I'm very excited to talk with you all about play-based learning. We held a session on executive function and play-based learning strategies at Ox Ridge for all ELP, kindergarten staff, and related service providers. So that was a really nice collaboration between general education and our SCSS department. What we did, every teacher actually committed to and related service provider using one of the strategies that we taught for executive function to try between now and the November 5th professional learning. And I've actually seen evidence of those strategies in every classroom I visited in pre-K and K already this school year. And what we're working on actually during that session is understanding the why. We talked a lot about brain research, the upstairs and downstairs part of the brain, and developmentally why this is the best approach for working with our young children. We also talked about the importance of standards alignment and the shift that we'll be making in some curricular areas to ensure that we're still hitting on all of the standards that we need to, but through different instructional pedagogy. As you know, we've also have developed a curriculum development a cycle for writing and revising of curriculum. So you'll hear more about this during the department chair's presentations and during the third presentation today, where we talk about the potential expansion for EduPlanet, which is where we house our curriculum. So you'll hear comments throughout their remarks today about where we are in each part of the cycle for each department.
And SRBI, we're making a shift district-wide from SRBI, which is scientifically research-based instruction, to MTSS, which is really a more comprehensive system of supports in K-8. We are providing professional learning to improve best practices, and our goal is to strengthen Tier 1 through data analysis and targeted instruction. This is particularly in the academic area, but we are also, MTSS also incorporates social, emotional, and behavioral health. So you'll be hearing more about that throughout the year.
Good morning. Just a quick introduction. Christian Dockham, the Science Department Chair. I'm very excited to talk a little bit about the work that we were able to accomplish over the summer. So this gives you an overview of the grade levels and courses that we had summer work done on this summer. I was very excited to work with our colleagues on this. We had 7 out of our 10 middle school teachers doing summer work this past summer, and 10 out of our 18 high school teachers. So we had a very busy summer season. We got very close to being done with our middle school curriculum in terms of revising and inputting those into EduPlanet. Our Biology 300 curriculum is very close to being done as well. And we had a complete development of our Anatomy and Physiology class, which was a new course that was approved last year and is being implemented at the high school currently for the first time. We also had some of our physics teachers working on the scope and sequence and starting to develop stage 1 in our Physics 300, 400, and AP Mechanics course. So we certainly had a very busy season and a very successful curriculum development summer. As Dr. Fettigan mentioned, based on our curriculum revision cycle, you'll see some of the next level of work coming down the pike, so to speak, that will be part of the budget proposals moving forward. Really looking at developing our chemistry scope and sequences in stage 1, some further development in some of our other AP classes that have started but have not had a had an opportunity to complete those. We'll see continuing stage 1 development of our physics courses and some of our electives that have been started already. Continuing development towards completing our stage 2 documents for our marine science elective. And we will certainly have the opportunity to complete grade 8 science and our biology 300 documents over the coming years. The most interesting aspect of our further work is the reflect, evaluate, and respond. And this gives our teachers an opportunity to sit and look at the curriculum that has been revised and make some adjustments based on their experience during the implementation process. So we'll be able to do that and really sort of dig down into seeing what was most effective and where we might need to make some little tweaks here and there to ensure our students achieve the understandings and overarching questions that we want them to. This year, our professional learning takes a little bit of a different tact because of our new teacher growth and support plan. So one of the main goals for me this year is to really support those teacher growth and professional learning goals that they're in the process of developing now. So it's a little bit different in the fact that we might have 10 teachers looking at 8 different teacher growth goals. So being able to provide the support and provide the opportunities for them to develop their own interests over the course of the year. Certainly, we are going to continue to look at the components and development of authentic performance assessments across the 612 department, and that really aligns with our stage 2 curriculum development. So when we talk about authentic performance, we're talking about being able to transfer those knowledge and skills into a new and authentic situation and be able to show that they truly have an understanding of how to utilize those knowledge and skills. At our middle school, the focus this year is going to be on the vision of the graduate competency of curiosity. So we're really looking at our questioning techniques and looking at how we can provide students a choice in how they show their understanding to elicit and develop their curiosity in the classroom. As you'll see, there's a sort of through line here and looking at instructional assessment strategies that will support both our content standards and the vision of the graduate competencies. One of the things that we started last year in terms of aligning some of our assessments is looking at student work. And so we're hopefully going to be able to have the opportunity to dig down deeper and to see what the analysis of student work can tell us and how we can make adjustments to what we're doing both in the classroom and within our curricular documents to best support our students. And then at both schools, we'll be focusing on instructional rounds and working through that process and at a larger scale this year. And then lastly, in terms of our assessment, really looking at continuing our integration of our interim assessment blocks. And those are questions that are similar to the NGSS assessments that students see in 8th grade and 11th grade. And those blocks are provided by the state and are content and skill aligned with our curricular units. Again, thinking about the design and implementation of authentic performance assessments so that we can highlight both instructional strategies, but also start to quantify where our students stand within our vision of the graduate competencies and also our transfer goals for the science department. And then making sure that we're looking at our student work to see where we need to fill in the gaps a bit, but also how we can make adjustments to those assessments to ensure that we're hitting on the key content and skills that we've laid out in our stage 1 documents from each of our units.
I think we should stop here.
Yeah, thank you.
And we'll do subject by subject. Are there questions on what question just presented? Go ahead, Katie.
Thank you for this.
You're welcome.
And I'm really, I can't think of a better sort of like focus for science than curiosity. So that sounds really great. I did want to ask about the biology, the 300 and the 400. The 300 you're in the middle of developing and the 400 you had said was like a reflect, evaluate, and respond. I'm curious if this is sort of looking at the gap and the differences between the 3 and the 400. This is a class that I think that like I have heard frequently from like students and parents that there's a big jump from the 300 level to the 400 level. So could you just talk a little bit about how you guys look at that and what the intentions are in the difference between those two levels?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that's really come to light over the past 6 or 7 years was the difference in those two courses, not only in the academic rigor of the two courses, but in the actual content that the two courses contain. And so one of the things that we've been able to do in this revision cycle here is really more align the content across the course so that you're getting similar content throughout the entire year. You're looking at similar, you're looking at ecology, you're looking at, cell division, you're looking at the same general topics, but in our biology 400 class or honors level class, they're not only going much deeper, but they're moving at a faster pace. And that allows for some additional topics that allow students to garner a much deeper conceptual understanding. And it's not that the topics are so much different, but it's like essentially you're moving to the next level within the same topic. So there may be two units on anatomy, and one is looking at just the structure, but then the second one in the 400 is really identifying how this structure influence the functions of those different anatomical features within the body.
And would you say that that's the way that the course is structured now, or that's the goal for next year? Or
No, that's a much more that's much more just that would be how it's structured now, as opposed in the past. Like the honors course may have had 13 units, and the 300 level course had 7 units. So there was just a vast amount of additional material in addition to the amount of to the rigor of that material. And so what we see now is both courses much better aligned to our state standards and to the NGSS standards for our life sciences.
Go ahead.
Thanks for going through all that. Really helpful. I had a question related to a couple of the bullet points that you went through, specifically related to the vision of the graduate. There's one that talks about supporting content standards, VOG competencies, related to instructional assessment strategies. I guess that's maybe the curiosity piece that you talk about. But then there's another one that talks about authentic performance assessments, aligning with discipline-specific standards, vision of the graduate, and transfer goals. On that one, what I'm trying to understand is like, what were we doing in terms of, when I read assessments, I think of testing. So what were we doing in terms of testing, and what's changing, and what are we going to do in terms of testing related to the vision of the graduate specifically? And part of the reason I ask is because we as a board and the administration are trying to figure out ways to measure the vision of the graduate and how we're actually achieving those goals. So I'm really interested specifically of what you are implementing there.
So I think it's important to understand that a performance-based task is really focused on the goals of the particular unit. So those goals are content-driven goals, they're skill-driven goals. For our purposes, we put our vision of the graduate competencies and we embed those into our stage 1 documents as well. So those performance tasks that we've been developing are really focused on measuring those specific aspects of, say, a vision of the graduate competency. So behind that poster over there, there are specific can-do statements or learning objectives that each competency has that sort of look fors that the teachers use. And so our curricular units identify those, and then our performance assessments that we develop for those have those intertwined with the content and the skills, so that we have a good idea as to how our students are achieving those objectives based on the competency that's part of the unit.
So maybe let's use curiosity since that's the one that's called out. Like, how will you be measuring a student's achievement of that?
So off the top of my head, I don't remember the exact 7 sort of look for statements or that are part of curiosity, but those would be integrated both into the instructional aspect of the course, building up to the assessment, and then be part of the assessment. So if one of the curiosity standards is being able to ask testable questions in a science class, right? Then we would have instruction, direct instruction, and give students the opportunity to build that skill within the course of the unit. And then that would be something that we might assess in a performance assessment. So they may ask, how are you going to approach this investigation so that you get the information that you want, and have them be able, the goal would be to have them be able to articulate that process and articulate a number of questions that they could use to determine what information or what data they need to collect in order to solve a problem, or to show that they have an understanding of the content or the skills within the unit.
Okay, thank you.
Am I on?
No.
Is this on? I had a question just going back to the SRBI and the move to the multi-tiered support system. If I could just, one question of how, what's the reasoning for moving to this new system, and how would this impact our SRBI staffing needs and training to the extent that we're now including speech, social, emotional, and behavioral health as part of it?
So that's a good question. When we look at our data, right now, we are really mostly looking at academic and behavioral, social, emotional separately. And we know that those things have an impact. So it's more looking at the whole child and seeing comprehensively what those needs are and how we can provide support. Classroom teachers are looking to strengthen that tier 1 piece for behavior. So that is a big part of it. And it's also the state's model. It's something that the state has shifted to, and we just haven't gotten there yet. And our speech language pathologists do want to provide services to students before they have IEPs, because there are some things that are more of a quick fix. And they can provide those in an SRBI without students having an IEP.
Okay, so the goal still would be that a student would go into that kind of SRBI model.
Absolutely.
And then ideally then move out into the, right? Okay,
Yes,
so it's the
yes.
same kind of process essentially.
Yes, and the
Okay.
hope is that we can just target the instruction and the intervention.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
And will we be, just to follow up, because I had a similar question, are we going to be like tracking those students to see like, are they progressing?
Yes.
How long is it taking? And-
Same as we do now, absolutely. Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Move on to that.
This was going to add something really brief, but we have this situation come up frequently when a student might have something that's isolated or targeted, like a tongue thrust in speech. So it's a slight articulation area that could be referred to a tiered support, receive intervention, would be predicted to resolve without referring to PPT. So it's really, like Julie said, thinking about the whole child in the intervention process and including those related service providers in that both screening and intervention process.
And there doesn't seem to be a staffing implication for this. It's just, you're just including.
About
Yes.
Yes,
Mhm.
yep, perfect.
It's instruction.
Yeah, more professional learning, I would say.
Yeah, thank
It's a
you.
more comprehensive approach.
Yes, which I appreciate. Moving on to math.
Sure. Good morning. I'm Ronnie Rodier, the math chair for grades 6 through 12. Over the summer, we successfully refined and completed essential components of our curriculum. Specifically, we finalized course descriptions, unit overviews, and stage 1 elements, such as essential questions, enduring understandings, connections to the vision of the graduate. As you can see on the slide, we really got a lot done, even though it just says grade 6 and 7. In grade 6, we have 3 courses. In grade 7, we have 3 courses. The core courses in high school, Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, all of that is done, stages 1, 2, and 3. And you can see it on the district website where it's housed on EduPlanet for stage 1. We also worked all stages on probability and statistics at the high school and stage 1 for college math. I am really happy to say, as well as Christian, that we did grow our capacity for curriculum writers in the math department. They were all trained under the UBD design framework, and they used that when they were writing curriculum this summer. We had a third of the math department in both schools writing curriculum. So next up, we will be continuing to embed authentic performance tasks, thinking tasks, highlighting vision of the graduate competencies. We'll also be focusing on completing pre-calculus, geometry, and 8th grade algebra. And we also will be concluding our year-long research into identifying the primary resource to support our middle school courses, as our current resource is set to expire in 2026. So we will move forward with a resource that best supports differentiated instruction and offers diverse ways for all students to engage with the material. Regarding our professional learning, like Christian mentioned, we will also be supporting teacher goals and instructional rounds. Our focus in the math department is on critical thinking, authentic tasks, and students experiencing novel problems. Also, all our assessments, traditional and performance tasks, will be aligned to the standards and the vision of the graduate. And we will also be exploring ways that we can responsibly integrate AI as a tool to support both learning and teacher productivity with integrity and transparency. We're deepening our tech applications and our use of them in Desmos, which is really just an online graphing calculator. That's the calculator that also can be used on the SAT, and Delta Math, which is an interactive and adaptive learning experience. And we're ensuring that teachers are equipped with the skills to use both of those effectively. Regarding our instructional focus as we continue in the year, it will be on enhancing thinking classroom practices, and this approach centers on promoting productive struggle and critical thinking, all of which are deeply tied to our vision of the graduate competencies. Our goal in the math department is really just to create environments where students are thinking for longer periods of time within the context of the curriculum. This allows students to engage deeply with the material, fostering both mastery of content standards and a deeper understanding of the mathematics. By encouraging the sustained cognitive effort, we aim to develop learners that can really just navigate complex mathematical problems, persevere, and apply their learning in meaningful ways. As we continue to reflect on our assessment practices, we have made a conscious effort to integrate strategies that support student success on standardized assessments. When we look at the SBAC, we are always doing thinking tasks that support the content that's on the SBAC. We're also, what Christian mentioned, looking at that IAB data. For the SAT, as mentioned before, they will be looking at Desmos, but we also noticed that on the SAT and the ACT today, there's a lot more probability and statistics. So that's an integral focus that we look at in terms of curriculum. And for AP, we are continuing our good work in terms of readiness skills and conceptual understanding, and really preparing for students if they are on an AP exam and they see a problem that might look different than what they're used to, that they could persevere through that. Our overall focus really remains on fostering deep thinking, enduring learning that goes beyond the test prep. This focus is central to our PLC work in both schools, and we collaborate on developing instructional strategies and assessments that will enhance student learning.
Okay. I have a quick question about the resource, the new Middlesex resource that you're looking into. Where are you in that process? Are you going to be piloting? What is that going to look like?
So we actually formed a committee about a year ago that's filled with high school teachers, middle school teachers, and administrators, looking at every resource that's being used in our DIRT. We actually have completed that look, and now we're just reflecting on kind of the pros and cons of each one, looking at budget, looking at what we use now. Right now, we use Big Ideas as our primary resource. We use the online and the books. We are considering just using an online resource moving forward. But I think that we will have a decision on that by this budget season.
Okay.
Just following up on that, I just want to clarify that like we're using the term resource to kind of replace textbook, correct?
Well, it is a textbook. It's just that the textbook is online.
Right. I'm just
Okay.
saying that
Yeah.
when we say like a new resource, we're talking about adopting a new like
Yes.
textbook, like
Yes, ma'am.
from those of us that are old school. Okay, thank you. And then, I was curious, what a spiral review is.
Sure. So spiraling content means that if they are learning to solve equations in unit 1, and then in unit 2, they learn to graph those equations, we would want to spiral, so take some questions on solving those equations from unit 1 within unit 2. So it's really to help retention. We're not just going from unit to unit and we forget what we did before.
Just another question on the new resource for Middlesex. What was the thinking about why we needed a new resource?
Great question that I forgot to tell you that our resource is expiring. So it's expiring in 2026, and that's the purpose of our
Thanks.
investigation.
So have you been happy with big ideas or are you looking for a change?
The consensus is that I think the teachers, they're so happy with big ideas. It's only upgraded in terms of service for the students. I think that will likely continue with
Okay.
it. Obviously, there are budgetary concerns that we need to look at.
Thank
So
you.
when you say that there's new resource, I guess there's new online something, whatever it is it a new, like, is it all new or is it just an updated version? Like, what's the difference?
So there's just some upgrades. They have, what's really great, they have now performance tasks at the beginning of each unit. They upgrade the videos so the content stays relevant to the students when they do real life applications. So, they're not talking necessarily about CDs because students don't even know what that is anymore. So it's like upgraded, well, for some of us, so updated applications really, but not extreme upgrades. It's not brand new.
Okay. And a question for the board, I don't know the answer to this, is like, I know we approve textbooks. At what point is it qualify as like an upgrade? Does that qualify or no?
You want to take that and see what, I think if it's just an up, it's if a license expires and we re-up it, I don't know that we would need to reapprove it, but you can.
Yeah, I would say that if it's just an upgrade and we're sticking with this, I would consider that a same resource, and just a renewal. If it were a different resource with different content, maybe a different publisher, that would be something that probably we would want to have more robust discussion around.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, sorry, Katie.
Could you just talk about where the statistics course might fit into the sequence at the high school?
Yeah, right now, a traditional, like we're only learning statistics and probability. We have 2 courses that we offer at the high school at basically as an elective. So it's mostly filled with seniors. Some juniors do take it and they can take it at an AP level or they could take it at a college prep level. But our goal now that we're noticing it is really to try to infuse a little bit of data analysis in every course. So from algebra, geometry, algebra 2, pre-calculus, we want them exposed to data. The world is changing. We don't want them only seeing it in a probability and statistics course.
Thanks. Okay, thanks, Ronnie. We'll
Yeah.
move on to social studies. Welcome, Mr. Cabrera, to the table.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Cabrera. I'm the Social Studies Department Chairperson. Should I wait for the clicker? No, it's okay. So over the summer, this was work led by my predecessor, Keith Keeler, grades 6 through 8, middle school level. They completed stage 1 across the board for middle school and have begun making progress on stage 2. At the high school level, teachers worked on a few of our electives, Urban Studies elective and AP European History and AP Human Geography. And in those, stage 1 was completed again across the board. As far as professional learning over the summer, we have 2 teachers that attended the AP Summer Institute for our brand new course, AP Psychology, and 2 teachers that attended summer workshops, a summer workshop on emotional regulation and social thinking, and that was led by our very own Alicia Dad. In terms of our instructional focus for the year, a few things that we're focused on. First, feedback. I think teachers expressed to Mr. Keeler that they were, especially at the high school level, focused on writing and providing feedback for students, but sometimes frustrated by students' inability to incorporate the feedback that they were being given. So this has been something of a focus for us to think about how we can make sure not only that we're giving good feedback, but also that the students are receiving the feedback and then using the feedback within their work. In addition to that, we are also looking at artificial intelligence. We want teachers to find ways to engage with the technology, help students engage with the technology while being aware of using it with integrity, using it with transparency. We think that it's something that's definitely not going away. We have to prepare students for it, also teach them that they need to build the skills themselves, that this is a tool that can be used, but we don't want it to be abused. Also, there are new state social studies standards, and of course, our work with the vision of the graduate. So we want to continue to integrate the vision of the graduate and make sure these new social study standards are reflected in our curriculum and in our instructional practices. And then lastly, our professional learning communities are working on assessment, right? So very similar to what my science colleague mentioned about performance-based assessment, authentic assessment, very much what the social studies department is focused on as well. At the middle school, curiosity is the sort of school-wide goal. So we will continue to pursue that. And at the high school level, the teachers are within their PLC groups deciding which part of the vision of the graduate they would like to pursue in their development of authentic assessments.
Thank you. I know we could talk about AI for hours and hours and hours. Can you just give a couple examples of how you see teachers using that in the social studies department?
So one thing I think is really interesting use of it is to take a look at, say, a textbook that we use and take a look at how do they introduce a period of history, let's say the Revolutionary War in American history. Have students read that and then ask AI to produce a summary of the Revolutionary War and then kind of compare and contrast. What does AI include that's not in the text, or how does it compare similarities and differences, that kind of thing. So AI isn't perfect. It does sometimes produce what are called hallucinations. So it gives the kids the chance to see that this technology, it's, powerful, but it is by no means something that we can rely on or use all the time in a way that's seamless.
Good.
Just more on the AI topic. So I've heard that AI is already being rampantly abused, at least pervasively in the high school. Are there things that you all are doing, like, I don't know, like taking written tests or having to write written things in the classroom, not on a computer, that you're doing to get around that abuse to actually force the students to learn the content and materials?
Certainly, there are teachers who are pivoting more towards handwritten assignments. When it comes to things like homework, it's more of a challenge when we're talking about the writing of a research paper or an essay. AI is powerful enough that it can produce these things. So we really have to focus on process. That means that we're checking in with students all the way throughout the writing of a paper. It's not something that's assigned and say, okay, this is due in a week, I'll read it when you're done. We're checking in, we're creating milestones, right? So at this point in the process, you're writing a thesis and an introduction. I want to see that. We want to be able to conference with students. If we make process a bigger part of the assignment, then it not only prevents that, but it also creates investment on the part of the student. This is their work, their ability to do it. And that's what we want. Not to catch kids using AI, but to make it so that they don't want to and they have a reason not to. And that personal interaction is what AI cannot give, right? That's what the teacher can give, saying, I like what you did here. This is where you have room for improvement. It goes back to the feedback part of our goal as well. I think they work in tandem with each other. because that feedback is really helping to prevent the abuse of AI by students when it comes to written work.
And I guess just one, sorry, one other question related to that. So how are we ensuring that teachers are doing that? Because everything you just walked through makes total sense to me. But how are we making sure that that's actually, those practices are followed?
Yeah, I think it's we're holding each other accountable. So we're working collaboratively, and it helps when it's not a single teacher saying, this is the assignment, right? We have alignment that everyone's doing these assignments, and we are all creating these timelines of, it's not, oh, this is due in a month and I'll see it then. It's, what are your dates for when the thesis is due? What are your dates for when we're doing a research check? All of those things are done not in isolation, but together as a department. So we do it together, and that's the way that we ensure that everyone's doing it.
I have a question, and this is related more on the teacher kind of feedback to students and also use of AI by teachers, because I know some teachers seem to be using AI to do kind of like a grading. There are some grading apps and tools that are being used that I've seen kind of give very generic feedback sometimes, and it'll just be a generic thing that'll get repeated, for instance, throughout an essay or throughout a paper that is not necessarily really specific or actionable, where a student might be able to understand what they're getting wrong. And to your point, I think it's really, really important. I understand that using AI for teachers can also make processes more efficient, but I think especially at the high school level, when they're doing a larger project, essays, papers, the critical thinking and the thought process is really, really important to make sure that the teachers still are giving really actionable, thoughtful feedback specific to the students' thoughts and papers, whereas an AI grading tool might pick out some piece of one sentence that doesn't necessarily incorporate the thought process that happened over the rest of the paragraph. And so students might be frustrated because they might not be getting the necessary feedback for them to help improve, for instance, the next draft or the next time that they do a paper like this. And so I'm curious how you're helping from a professional development standpoint for teachers to learn and make sure they're balancing that in a classroom context.
Yeah, I think we have to model transparency for our students. I do think it's okay for a teacher to say, I'm using AI to check on your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation, sentence structure. So all of these things are going to be generated by artificial intelligence that you see. I think that is a good leveraging of the technology to save some time. At the same time, anything of substance has to come from the teacher. So the teacher should say, this is what I used it for when they talk to the students. And I also am meeting with each of you individually one-on-one, and we're going to focus on elements of your paper that we really need to make stronger. So one of the things we do is model. And the second thing is we still have to meet with that student. We still have to provide something that's substantive, that's direct, that's individualized to what the student wrote, the student produced. So I think that's gives us a balance of we're using the tool and we're even being clear that the tool is being used, but we're very specific about what the purpose of it is. It's not to give actionable, individualized feedback, but to do some of these kind of more nitty-gritty, like small things that the kids might need help with as well.
Okay, yeah. And I mean, again, like if you're a freshman in high school, and it's your first time doing really, a long kind of independent research paper, like I know that they do in the world class.
Western Civ, yeah.
In order for them to then be prepared for, their sophomore year, junior and senior year to kind of get that fundamental foundation of, okay, how do you really do this and how do you do it well? And if you're missing something in your research or how you're kind of supporting your thesis, and, AI isn't the right tool to provide that feedback. And so I really want to make sure that the teachers still are giving that kind of substantive, detailed feedback. Like, we used to get papers that had handwritten notes in the margins. We don't have that anymore. It's all in a Google Doc. And so I want to make sure that we're still getting that kind of tool to help the students just progress.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So just continuing on the topic. So as we're talking, and this is, you're getting a lot of the AI questions because it happens to be, but it applies, I think, around the room. I don't think we definitely don't have a board policy around AI. I don't know if we have a district policy around AI, but to me, it falls within the category of technology lacking policies that we don't have that,
I can.
would it be helpful for us
I
to have
can-
something? And I think that the people in this room would be helpful to frame what that should
In the
look
high
like. if
school
we do.
student handbook, there is something about AI. And it essentially says that if the teacher, isn't explicitly saying that it's okay to use, that students should not use it. So we have a policy right now at high school, at least, where it's saying, avoid this technology unless the teacher is explicitly saying that this is part of the assignment.
Mhm.
So, and we are experimenting with, we have teachers using it in the classroom, showing kids different things. And there may be assignments where they're asked to use it. But generally speaking, I've told teachers, we want to be explicit, even though that exists, to tell students explicitly, do not use AI if that's the policy on the particular assignment, just because I don't want any confusion of, well, we used it for this, but now you're saying we can't use it for that. So I tell the teachers, and some of them, I think all of them have in their syllabus, don't use this because in the student handbook it says, don't use this unless you're told to. But I'm asking that they do it for each assignment as well.
Yeah, and both for students and for teachers. It sounds like there should be guidelines, policy, something. It sounds like, I don't know if we need to elaborate on that or not, but.
Whether there's a policy or practice or otherwise, or maybe it's nothing. At the minute for this particular year, this is the fertile ground of learning and leading. We're expecting our department chairs to work with our staff on the ground with this. At the start of this year, the focus of convocation was AI. And we've been working with a leading expert in informational AI in terms of instructional practices. So we had all of our teachers pre-K through 12, right? So you can imagine through that we have everybody who, from experts to who are like high flyers and want to incorporate it, to the people who think this just ethically we shouldn't even be using that at all, and everybody in between. So we have empowered our staff for this particular year to go explore this thoughtfully, creatively, ethically, and just to bring back ideas of how we should use this, might implement this. Whether we did a policy, Greg, or not, we just need some permission and space for people to navigate a wee bit and learn about this. I'm just thrilled that these people are representative of staff on the ground who are actually putting their foot in the water, leading it. And this is an area that, like any other area, I would expect our staff to actually lead in. So this is a year for like giving them permission to explore, learn together, and to bring back then what our takeaways are.
I think my personal take on it is that a Board of Ed policy is very, it's a blunt instrument and it's hard to change. And that AI is a world that's changing so frequently that I would feel most comfortable with this as an administrative guideline or ideas or, leave it with you guys. That's my own personal take on it, just because it takes forever to change a policy. All right, moving on. Where are we? ELA, another new one at the table. Welcome.
Good morning. Am I on? No? Yes?
Yes, you're
Okay,
on.
I don't have a button, so I wasn't sure. I think that if I can just piggyback on the conversation that just ended. Good morning, Kristen Colonies. Happy to see you here, Department Chair of English 6 through 12. Thinking a lot about AI over the past few years, working on it. And I think ultimately it comes down to really not so much maybe about teaching students how to use AI, but the heart of it is the integrity that's involved, that we want our students to make sure that they are moving purposefully, ethically, with integrity, and using it in a way that is going to support their learning and growing, and using it as a tool and a resource and not as a crutch or an alternative to thinking. And I do think the world is changing pretty frequently around that. And so making sure that our kids have that strong basis of integrity there is a part of our focus. And I know that in the English department, we also have a section in our syllabus where teachers address the expectation of unless AI is approved by the teacher, it's not being used. And teachers also do a plagiarism and integrity lesson at the start of the year. Every teacher does it to make sure that the expectations are very clear to the students. So it's an ongoing conversation, I think, and I think we would be smart to continue that conversation together because it's constantly evolving, really. So, and I'm excited to be part of that conversation. So I can speak to some of the summer curriculum work that was initiated by my predecessor, Francis Janasco. We were busy as well. We had about 3/4 of the department working on curriculum work. And the biggest project, as I'm sure you could guess, was based on English 8 and 9 and Honors 9. We want to have that coursework all prepared for February when our course registration starts. So there was a lot of work collaboratively together. I would say we had 8 teachers working on that together over the summer, looking at what are some other courses and curriculum like in other DERGs, in our DERG, other schools in our DERG rather, and looking to identify what are the learning goals and standards that are appropriate for our revision courses, basically. The teachers were then able to set off and start looking at placement criteria for that, the new course in the high school, and also looking to make sure that 8th grade had challenging opportunities of challenge built into that curriculum, whether that was through challenge projects that were going to be incorporated throughout the year for students, and also starting to consider different texts that will be appropriate for students. We want to make sure that students who are in that English 8 class are both getting the support that they need and the rigor that they need. And so teachers are really being mindful about that and piloting some of that work this year as well in their classrooms to test out what needs to be revised, what's working, what needs continued focus. I'm actually going to just jump to the next slide so you can kind of think back to the Board of Ed presentation from last year. And we are pretty much on track. Our work from June was completed in terms of identifying the other schools in our DERG that are following a similar pattern, looking at our goals and looking to revise that placement criteria as well. The first bullet point of July and August is not checked off yet, simply because we've created an end of year assessment, but we are still looking at our mid-year assessments. And so we didn't feel like we could get quite half of a check mark going there. There's not a graphic for that yet. We have moved forward with, like I said, identifying those skills and concepts and themes for the year, as well as starting to draft those course descriptions. And at this point, I'm going to back up. We're going to continue on looking for the next phases of the process. So continuing looking at stage 2 and stage 3. We should be on track though to be ready for new registration in February. English 10 and American Lit and AP Lang all had some focus as well. They were among the 10 projects total that were worked on over the summer, so English teachers were busy. But we focused on specifically our development of stage 2, developing some learning activities, and also stage 3, thinking about those assessments as well. For our AP work, we were focusing on making sure that the assessments were aligning with the updated testing that was happening in the AP coursework. Let's go ahead to this. So up next for us is continuing to focus on that 8th grade, 9th grade, and 9th grade honors curriculum. English A and English B, a lot of this work is in process. We have much of that documentation that needs to be memorialized in EduPlanet itself. And so teachers are going to be looking at finalizing some of those units and making sure that we are incorporating appropriate assessments that are aligning to our school goals and our district goals. AP Lang and AP Lit also are going to be getting some focus, creating the stage 1 process of that. And like I said, memorializing the summer work that was done across the district, across the department. I'm particularly excited about our professional learning that we've got planned for this year. Our expertise groups have evolved. If you're familiar with them from last year, Mr. Janasco gave us opportunities to become experts in particular areas of focus. This year, I've kind of evolved them to really still focus on what are teacher practices that can impact student learning most efficiently, but also keeping in mind some of the needs of our students and our school goals. So some of those expertise groups that I'm now calling learning spheres, forgive the English teacher in me, they're going to be focusing on things like incorporating academic vocabulary and looking at our students who both need support for vocabulary work, but also looking for our students who are looking for the challenge of academic work. I remember earlier on this summer when I spoke with you, there was a question around what about our students who are not an idea, but are still looking for that challenge of academic language and vocabulary challenge. And so we've got some teachers interested in exploring that as well. Likewise, with continuing to look at making sure our assessments are aligned with our vision of the graduate. I was listening to a lot of the conversations just now around that and thinking about how to measure those competencies in our classrooms. And I do think that we are spending some time this year reflecting on what does that type of learning look like? If you walk into a classroom, what does curiosity look like? How do we measure that? And making sure that those qualities, those behaviors, the language that we hear in the classroom is reflective of that. Jumping the artificial intelligence, I feel like we've talked a little bit about that definitely, but instructional rounds are really going to help thinking about what those competencies look like in the classroom and also looking to see how we can grow our teaching practice to better impact student learning. Our instructional focuses really are complementary to what I just reviewed, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Assessments is last. My assessments are very similar to what you just heard from my colleague, Mr. Cabrera, as well. We're going to be looking at supporting differentiation in our work and making sure that data is a driving factor. And a lot of that, looking at disaggregating some of that data on a variety of assessments and considering what assessments we have available to us, what data we have available to us that's worth considering, and making sure that we're using that to really focus on creating assessments or refining our assessments to align with the vision of the graduate and making sure that we're meeting our school and district goals.
Thank you. Questions of English, Katie?
I wanted to say that I appreciated the look back at the timeline. That's actually really helpful for connecting like our meetings and also, you know, just like summer was a long time for all of you.
Yeah.
Like, it is, so thank you for that. And then I also feel the need to give you credit for your source citation. Clearly you're an English teacher. I did want to ask about when you had mentioned the high level of vocabulary in the content areas, that seems really interesting to me. And I'm curious how, at the high school level, how we might be integrating and looking critically at skills such as spelling and writing mechanics as well, you know, especially in light of our current conversations around the early literacy program. And I'm just concerned about how we are continuing to emphasize the importance of those skills in our older students as well, when they're maybe not as explicitly taught.
So I've been fascinated. Some of my personal summer work has been based in learning about the science of reading and how it's applicable to secondary levels. I've been working a lot at the middle school with our interventionist, Krista Pugh, and looking at how we can support our students in that way. One of the things we've been considering is developing a literacy lab at the middle school specifically that kind of mimics the work that's being done at the high school. And we want to be really mindful about how students would be referred to the literacy lab. It would be part of kind of a tier 1.5 intervention, if that makes sense. But we're really trying to be mindful first about how students would find themselves with that support. And vocabulary and language and spelling are really at the core of that. I also think that part of the work we need to do is with our teachers and helping them see that just because they're at the secondary level, this type of work is applicable to them and that they can do a lot of things even at an 11th grade level to support students. They can use what they're seeing in their students' writing to identify maybe gaps or deficits to help either refer them for some support intervention or something that they can work on targeting in their own classroom. So I do think that part of that is going to be based on some professional learning for our teachers specifically.
And thank you again for all of the work that, I agree with Katie, the emphasis for the high school level in particular about the vocabulary, spelling and grammar. So I appreciate that very much. The question I have has to do more with, the middle school, the changes to English 8, 9. One question, are we going to be continuing to differentiate within English 8? And how would that work? And then the next question I have is, to the extent that we are evaluating new texts, resources, and curriculum after having looked at what the DERG A other schools do, will the Board of Ed have an opportunity to see what those new texts or what we would be doing in those courses prior to it being approved basically in February?
So I will be transparent and starting with your second question first. That will be part of my learning and understanding that process. So before I answer that with a definitive answer, I'd like to learn a little bit more about what that process is. I have full expectation that those texts would be transparent. Our goal is to work as a collaborative community and start supporting our students with this. So I think that making the best text choice decisions for our students is a collaborative effort, but there'll certainly be recommendations and decisions made with intention. But I'm hesitant to give you a more definitive answer without learning more.
I can say that you've done a nice job, Kristen. So the work is definitely in partnership and in collaboration and with full transparency. So I was thinking about Katie's earlier comments about a textbook. So something that's more comprehensive and whole would absolutely be something that the board would approve. There are so many resources when you think about what we can put in any class in the way of a text, an article, a website. It would be exhaustive. And we also trust the autonomy and skill set of our teachers to select those. We want them to do that. However, that's the purpose, I think, of these curriculum committee meetings, is to kind of keep that dialogue fresh and current and to ensure that there aren't surprises like that. Parents need to know what's happening in children's classroom, and our teachers need to know what resources they should be using and what resources they can share that they find on their own accord that would benefit and strengthen the department's work.
As for the first question, I think that, yeah, teachers have been really mindful about making sure that this course does not become targeting one type of student. There's a wide range of students that they know are part of our population, and thinking about diversifying their levels of maybe book clubs. I know that that's been part of the consideration, making sure that students have opportunities to experience different levels of texts based on their ability. Likewise, incorporating challenge projects throughout the year. There are opportunities for students to attend to more challenging tasks. Should the teacher recommend them to it, or should they have that internal natural inclination to step up to the task itself? Those are just a few of the ways.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other ELA questions? Thank you. Well done. All right, moving on to language, grabbing the clicker.
Okay, I also don't have a button, so I'm assuming this is live.
Just pull that to
Yeah.
Just pull.
There you go.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Scott Webster. I'm the K-12 World Languages Coordinator. It's nice to see you all. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the summer work that we did. We had 10 teachers working on various projects, curriculum projects this past summer, ranging from 6th grade Mandarin all the way up to our new course this year, which is the Advanced Spanish Art UConn ECE course. And we have more than double this number of projects already in process for this current academic year. Talking about professional learning, we did a lot of things this past year, including our teacher, you can see in the picture, Senora Lima from the high school. She's presenting at the National ACTFL Conference. And this is a performance-based assessment where AP students get together and they actually propose a presentation. They pitch to the World Cup Soccer Federation to kind of argue why their country of choice is the best one suited to host the next World Cup Soccer tournament, ranging from including different elements like the economy and infrastructure. And it's a really wonderfully amazing project. And teachers, we are the
Don't forget the
judges for
politics
this
of
as
it.
well. Sorry?
Don't forget the politics of it.
I know. Lots of politics involved, but yep. So yeah, so that's Veronica. And we are, thanks to the generosity of the Board of Ed, we are constantly with teachers the very first week of school. We're signing up, hey, you want to go to conferences? And so thank you for your generosity for supporting those endeavors. Our focus this year, since my role is new here, instead of 6-12, it's K-12 approach, is really including the K-5 folks in the conversation in terms of vertical alignment. And so this is super exciting this year and really underlines the importance of professional learning time, which we're all taking advantage of this year. Thank you very much for that. And talking about assessment, we are excited that we have a really strong group of seniors who continue to earn the seal of biliteracy in Darien. And about 43% of the class of 24 earn the seal of biliteracy. And this really is a testament to the strong language program that we have here and the commitment that students have to attaining proficiency in the language, not only the languages that we teach in Darien, but also heritage languages. So in addition to our languages that we teach formally, we had students who got a second seal of biliteracy in languages including German, Portuguese, Russian, and Estonian. So we hope to continue to support that endeavor as well.
Thank you. Foreign language questions? I just have I know you're new to your seat, but I have a question about the K-12 vertical alignment.
Yep.
So Spanish is the only language at the elementary level.
Correct.
So how do you involve, French, Mandarin, other teachers that are 6-12 in that vertical alignment, or do you not?
They're part of the conversation. We're going to be focusing a lot this year on transitions from 5th to the 6th grade, as well as from 8th to 9th grade in our target languages. And, language pedagogy is similar no matter what the language is.
Yeah.
So I feel that we have a lot of strength. We have a lot of experience among our faculty who can really help with that conversation, no matter what the language is.
Right. So it's more about the how you teach, more the what you
Correct.
teach. Great.
Yeah.
Yes, language? Okay. Thanks, Scott.
Great. Thank you.
Moving on to our PK-12 art and music with Ms. Thompson.
Good morning. I am eager to present on both art and music this year. So we did some summer curriculum work. As I've presented in the past, we've been approaching curriculum revision in general music from kind of the bottom up in terms of we revised and entered into EduPlanet our full scope and sequence and all stages for K2. And this summer we worked on grade 3 music. And all 6 of our elementary general music teachers were involved in this. This also leads us to grade 3, where we start introducing instruments to students. So students can start playing string instruments in 3rd grade and wind instruments and percussion instruments in 4th grade. So we worked on some units that really just help students prepare for those experiences, such as introducing them to instruments of the orchestra and also talking about concert etiquette. It's been kind of apparent to us that, maybe recently, maybe since the pandemic, or maybe just things have changed in terms of we now have the ability to stream most concerts directly into our homes. Maybe how less frequently families and students are experiencing live music concerts, especially classical music concerts. So we're kind of refocusing on giving some guaranteed experiences to students through partnerships with orchestras. So we're going to be working with the Norwalk Symphony this year they have a young person's concert in March. So we're going to look to do some outreach with them and really just help students understand the value of live music and how interesting and exciting it is, and how to engage with that. And that will transfer, hopefully, certainly over to their own performances for their classmates and families. We also had the opportunity to work on some new course development. So as you approved last year, we have a new course in art, digital drawing and design, and a new course in music and theater, theatrical storytelling, design, and technology. So we really got those courses up and running and got a good start on the curriculum work for those courses. In terms of our professional learning, we had our first opportunity to meet together as a pre-K through 12 visual and performing arts program in August, and that was really exciting. We started off by reviewing the ideas that were presented in the Tri-State report. As I had again presented last year, the teachers hadn't had a chance to get together since the results or the report was published. So it gave us a really good opportunity to talk about those ideas and how it might lead to our next level of teaching and learning in the department. That led to a lot of discussion about interdisciplinary collaboration between art and music and really authentic ways to both work on interdisciplinary things within the curriculum, but also how we're presenting events in terms of art, music, and theater to the community and how we can collaborate really authentically and well on those. We're working on effective integration of new technology, such as the LED video wall and the Wacom tablets into art, music, and the theater curricula. And like everyone else, we're discussing AI implications for the visual and performing arts. The music teachers will be attending a session on election day that actually has a pretty robust segment discussing music considerations with AI. We live in a world now where you can ask AI to generate a song for you using any criteria. You can ask AI to generate digital art for you using any criteria. And so, we're really conscious of that. And, luckily most 98% of what we do is live and in person with the students. But it's really important that we stay ahead of those technologies and really collaborate on how to use AI effectively to generate ideas, but not generate products. And so that's our focus, and we're really excited about learning more. In terms of our instructional focus, we're working on refining practices and really initiating practices for ELP art. That's a new offering this year, and that's has started already, and we have some PD upcoming in terms of play-based learning and how that can contribute to developing curriculum, refining practices for ELP art. We're talking about rotational art, so how those extra art classes are incorporated into the elementary art curriculum. Continuing to integrate vision of the graduate into our instructional practice and continuing to learn how STEM and STEAM contribute to learning in music and the art. Music and visual art, not the art, that's not a thing. And finally, I don't have a separate assessment slide because I wanted to really highlight that assessment for music and the visual arts and theater, really, you can think of assessment in three ways. You can think of assessment of learning, kind of traditional testing. You can think of assessment for learning, getting feedback on some kind of written assessment. In the music and in the visual and performing arts, we really operate as assessment as learning. So as they're creating music together, as they're producing a show, as they're creating visual art materials, that is the product. So, we're working on refining our own practices of looking at those products objectively, but also, maintaining student choice and voice and creativity. But I think that's a really interesting lens to look through as we talk about authentic performance-based assessment. That is what the visual and performing arts allows.
Thank you. Katie?
Colleen, can you talk a little bit about how the process weighs in? I thought that was really interesting, how you had talked about in terms of writing and how important that was, especially with AI. And I'm sure anyone who has a social media account has seen that, there are things that we all see that we're like, this is not real, right? Like, so in terms of art and the really realistic quality. And not that I'm like, want to go down like an AI rabbit hole and concerned about that. I was just using it as an example for how important, I am not a musician, but a bit of an artist. So just that process, right, of refining and working and reworking and developing your projects. Can you just talk a little bit about how that comes into the teaching, the learning, and the assessment as well, in addition to the final product?
Sure. Yeah, so, you know, I found it really interesting listening to Dennis talk about, you know, the check-ins on the process. And that is really how, you know, we have a few different strands in music and art. Some of it is, you know, creating a product, and some of it is refining a product. So when students are creating music, when students are creating art, the process is as important, if not more important than the product. It's about learning how to make artistic choices. It's about learning how to use art history and the art of other contemporaries in making your own choices and seeing what's out there. So, you know, in terms of what's generated by an artist by using technology authentically, and what is generated by AI with no input. So those things are really important. Actually, our DHS PLC focus for art this year is really working on rubrics and assessment tools to evaluate students' work in progress and to do peer assessment of work in progress. So it's not just about the product, but it really is about the process. So that will be a huge part of our learning this year. Sure.
You good? I'm good.
Great.
Thank you, Philly. All right, last but not least down there.
Good morning. I'm Greg Darren. I'm the department coordinator for 6 through 12 career and technical education. And I'll talk a little bit about some of our curriculum highlights over the summer and the spring of last year. So we took a little bit of a different route because we are an electives course and we are based off numbers. So in preparation for the EduPlanet Live rollout, we focused on being sure that all of our course descriptions and unit descriptions were ready for the rollout. So we have 25 of our 26 high school courses all completed with our course descriptions and our unit descriptions, and all 4 of the courses at the high school, all 4 of the courses at the middle school. Some of the work that we did in the spring and over the summer, we have a proposal for 3 new courses, one AP Business Principles course, an AI with Python course, and a cybersecurity course. The stage of this right now is it looks like the cybersecurity course for sure is moving forward. The other 2 are something that we might have to push off to the following year. In our business curriculum, we are in progress on our stage 1 for investing in personal finance, our marketing course, and our business and entrepreneurship course that was done over the summer. Through 9 through 12, our tech ed courses, we are working on stage 1 for our web and app development course and our AP Computer Science A course. And in middle school, we had a new teacher take on this role this year and did a great job with updating the curriculum for that course for our 7th grade computer applications course. And some of this work will continue throughout the year. So our curricular focus, I would say, for this year would be not only while we're working with horizontal alignment across our courses, but vertical alignment. So we'll be bringing the full team 6 to 12 together throughout this year to work on our stage 1 progress of courses where we could talk and collaborate and make sure that we have our pathways in line from a 6th grade program up to our 12th grade program in computer science and technology education. Some of the professional learning that we focused on this year, we had, starting last year, we had 6 teachers attend our annual Connecticut Technology and Engineering Association Conference, which is coming up again this fall. We had a teacher attend the Business Teachers Association of New York State Conference. We had a teacher, the same teacher actually, attended some night courses for accounting through WealthBox. It was over Zoom. It was a live course. We had a teacher attend some cybersecurity training at University of New Haven in preparation for the potential new cybersecurity course. And we had sent one of our middle school teachers to the International Technology and Engineering Conference. And we had 2 teachers attend the ISTE conference in Denver this summer. Do you have any questions?
Katie.
Just one quick comment. I don't remember this being part of our curriculum overview before. Is this a new section called out specifically? Am I just not remembering? Well,
For professional learning?
well, yeah, and just kind of as a focus of our offerings. Anyway, I'm
So-
really excited to see it
Right.
here.
It might have been separated into like technology education, engineering, computer science, business. So I'm kind of collaborating all these into career and technical education. So the term CTE, you might be
Okay.
a little newer.
Okay.
And I think in general, across the state of Connecticut, there's a much greater focus and emphasis on career and technical education. So I think if it hasn't been in years prior, it is now and should be. It's a very important area of our work with our young people.
Yeah,
More
wonderful.
important than ever.
I really appreciate the way that this is called out specifically. And I just wanted to say that I think that a lot of these classes are really important for kids to get, sort of like that hands-on applicable experience into different areas and what they like. And also I think it really contributes just to sort of our goals of when students leave the high school about like being ready to go out into the world. And so thank you just for putting these together in this way.
And I would say one of the focuses of moving to that term, career and technical education, is because of national career pathways. That's the same term that they use. And if you look it up, we're trying to mimic some of the career pathways that we see in our country and in our state.
This is not necessarily in this, what you presented, but are you seeing an increase in interest in these types of courses?
We are. I would say computer science over the past few years has definitely increased in enrollment. Between last year and this year, and we've seen an increase of probably 40 to 50 students in the technology education aspect, and an increase for business too. I think some of that might be with the personal finance requirement. So over the past few years, we have seen definitely an increase.
And
yeah.
can you remind us, what is that personal finance requirement? Everybody has to take it or just has to be offered?
Right, the current sophomores right now, the state was requiring them to take some form of personal finance course. I think other districts and DERGs, what we're looking into, of what classes might qualify for that. Personal finance absolutely 100% does, but we're looking into other aspects of what courses might fit for that criteria as well.
This would be an area down the line, whenever we look at a facilities package for looking at the high school, so on that would potentially explore some other areas in this field.
And Greg and I have also talked a little bit about certifications and thinking about career pathways, allowing opportunities for within curriculum development for our young people to earn certifications in the CTE areas.
Sorry, Alan, were you suggesting like looking into potential for expanding some of our facilities at the high school in order to offer more
I'm just saying
classes?
it's an opportunity when we look at the high school. We don't have, for instance, just culinary arts we don't have for kids. So it would be an opportunity to look at all those spaces and programs.
Great, thank you.
I think that was the end of.
That's really it. I won't speak to this piece now because we'll go into another education. And this is already outdated since the publication of the packet, other work has been done here. So it's already old.
Okay, thank you. I very much appreciate you taking the time to be here this morning. So I think it's okay with Amy. You guys can take off.
Absolutely. We talked about that. Thank you for your comprehensive, passionate work.
Thank you, everybody.
This next year.
Thank you.
And the work of our teaching staff.
All right, our next topic, next agenda item is the K-3 literacy update, which we are all eagerly anticipating, I'm sure.
Okay, a lot to talk about. Hello again. This is an update of not only K-3 literacy, of course, but the interreading pilot. So I'm gonna just provide a brief history, some of the updates, talk specifically about the pilot, look at the interreading versus our current curriculum, some new curriculum enhancements, and then talk about next steps. So just some of the updates. As you know, the interreading pilot is in grades 1, 2, and 3. We have 7 teams, 3 first grade teams, 2 second grade, and 2 third grade teams across all of the 5 schools. We didn't pilot in kindergarten because of the play-based learning initiative this year. We also have identified vocabulary. Actually, spelling is another thing that we are working on this year, but vocabulary and explicit grammar. And we have done work in all classrooms in all grades, and I'll talk more about that. And then assessment literacy, and this is kind of related to our shift in SRBI. We have a lot of data, but we are really providing some professional learning with teachers and getting better about how to look at the data and how does that really inform our targeted instruction and intervention. So just a brief history, since really, we got the waiver decision in December, we've been engaging in conversation with the state regarding the waiver decision and the feedback. We've established a pre-K to 12 steering committee and then a core review team, which is elementary, primary teachers really who know the work of early literacy and foundational skills. We have surveyed families and staff. We facilitated teacher focus groups. We reviewed the state-approved resources as well as our own Darien curricular materials, had some pros and cons, and then we identified a program that we wanted to pilot. It was Into Reading. And we also identified resources and strategies in our own curriculum that we needed to address some areas of growth. And in the spring, we organized a site visit to Branford. We had about 12 of us that went up there because they had implemented Into Reading a year before. So we got some feedback and got to observe some classrooms, which was really helpful. We determined our pilot teams. We met with the teachers. So that's our history and just a more comprehensive timeline, which you have seen before. And these are really next steps, which I'm going to talk to afterwards. But during the summer, we did some planning for the pilot. We had the teachers involved, had an opportunity to unpack the materials, and we had some professional learning. We determined feedback opportunities. The leadership team met to plan how we were going to support teachers. And then this fall, I'll talk more about this, but we've had professional learning. We have opportunities for feedback, and then how we are going to make recommendations. So just a reminder of our possible outcomes: to adopt an approved model in its entirety or a compendium from the state, make no change to our curriculum, or maintain our current curriculum with updated resources and supplements. And this is just a link to all of the presentations. So for Into Reading, I'm going to talk about the materials, and resources, the professional learning, communication, and feedback. Materials and resources, there are teacher-facing materials and student-facing materials. There are 2 teacher manuals actually in grades 1 and 2. They have a teacher's guide and a structured literacy guide. This is a change that Into Reading made in the past probably year or so, where they pulled out the structured literacy, the phonemic awareness, the phonics piece, and they have a separate guide to that. Those materials were received by most teachers in June. And then the student materials, the students all have a reading book, an anthology with the texts in them. There's a Start Right reader in 1st and 2nd grade, decodable text for small group. There's a read and respond journal, and a know it, show it, which is, practice sheets. There's also a very robust digital platform with a lot of slides, with anchor charts, with assessments, with additional resources. And so teachers have been navigating all of those resources. Professional learning, we started with an in-person 3-hour session in August for all of the teachers. There have been 3 virtual, actually there's 60-minute sessions. We had 2 last week. They've been very helpful. We have 1 coming up, and they're grade level specific. We have the same trainer from Into Reading. She's excellent. They are very responsive. We've also had building level PLCs. For these teams, their PLCs are primarily devoted to the Into Reading work. We have had cross-district sessions for the pilot teachers so that they can share experiences, and teachers have found things and resources that they've shared with one another. We have plans for November 5th, professional learning session. Houghton Mifflin has been very responsive. They've offered office hours with their staff developers. They have leadership check-ins with us. We have engaged in some classroom visits, and within each building, there have been release time for teachers for collaborative planning. It's a shift, certainly, when, pedagogically, it just looks different. So for the teachers, there's been a heavy lift for them. In terms of communication, we did send a letter to families of students in the pilot program explaining the pilot and assuring them that all of the components of literacy that we always teach that, would be taught as well. And that their teachers were getting support. We had slides for the teachers at open house, and they talk more to parents. Planning for October conferences where they'll be able to share how their children are doing with families. And we have a parent session coming up at the Darien Library on October 16th. And that is actually for all families. And we'll talk about the pilot, but really talk about our literacy program overall.
Is that an evening presentation?
It's during the day and it will be recorded. Okay. In terms of feedback, Houghton Mifflin has created a question and answer live Google Doc, and they're very responsive. When a teacher posts on it, they must be checking it all the time because they do have prompt responses, which is wonderful. We've created our own feedback forms that are connected to the grade level scope and sequence so teachers can provide specific feedback on different components of the program, and they can also see each other's feedback and respond. We have our literacy team meetings. We have one coming up this afternoon, and we're gathering feedback from teachers, which we share with one another. And just, it's an opportunity to provide tips and some coaching where needed. And as I said, the PLCs, the teams meet formally and informally to share ideas. And our teachers are great about reaching out and having that network with one another across schools. So a scope and sequence, and I've linked each grade level in here so that you can see this, but this actually came about because a parent of a student in one of the third grade, actually a pilot teacher, asked, what is the difference? And so what we did was, this is a scope and sequence that we have created for our teachers, and we've always done this, but this is what the reading literacy portion looks like with our current compendium of resources and then the interreading. So you can really see like a month by month comparison. This is just a snapshot, but you have links to the full grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3 comparisons, which I think are helpful, particularly to look at the foundational skills. It's a little bit hard with the reading and writing when you see the title of a unit to know specifically what skills are taught within there. But it's a nice just balance. Explicit vocabulary instruction is something that is being taught in all classrooms. This is an area that we knew was an area of growth for us. Interreading has a very robust vocabulary program, and it's actually something that teachers have identified as a strength of the program. We have also provided professional learning to all teachers in WordLove, which is also research-based, and all teachers in grades 1 through 5 who are not doing the interreading pilot are implementing that. Very, very similar strategies in the way they're taught. These are two pictures of vocabulary instruction. One is interreading and one is WordLove. So they all use visuals, they all use student-friendly definitions, they all use synonyms, antonyms, and have students engage in conversation and discourse around the word. So obviously the goal is for kids to use them in their speaking and their writing. Grammar instruction also was an area of growth for us. Interreading, a lot of the writing in that program is explicit grammar instruction. We have been looking at the new TC units of study and writing, which have grammar embedded in them. And this is just an example of a third grade sample of sequence of grammar, very similar content in both programs. So teachers are piloting both. So far, the feedback on both has been positive.
So just to clarify, you will eventually choose one of those, not do both?
Yeah. Mhm. So next steps, as you know, the implementation, and it's only week 4 of school. So, the first week is always kind of a getting to know you. So we're really getting into the programs right now. Things are going well. We have feedback already from the teachers who are piloting into reading. There's positive and there's some challenges, and some of it is dependent on the teacher and the team, but implementation is going well. We have Word Love also going well. We're getting good feedback from everybody and getting support. We have some observations planned. We are looking at data. And we've added a spelling assessment so that we can compare actually one program to another. Our spelling assessment has primarily been Foundations, which is program specific. Into Reading also has a spelling assessment, which is program specific. So we wanted something that was really standards based so that we can see where all kids are. We're continuing to gather feedback, and then we will be planning in the spring for budget implications for multiple options, and then based on the recommendations, determine what we bring. In addition, we are continuing to work with the state. We actually have a meeting with them at the end of October and just sharing our work with them and getting some feedback.
Okay. Thank you. I know Katie has to run to have the train. Do you want to start off?
Thank you. Can you confirm we have not actually purchased the new units of study writing? Is that correct? That we're piloting that now as well?
We are piloting them in some classrooms.
So I'm curious why we would be doing that, why we would be concurrently piloting two things, especially when one is kind of comprehensive and fits all the boxes. So maybe we can talk about that more at the next update. And I would just say that, especially from the conversation that we had earlier with the department chairs and what we kind of are seeing in our older students, that I do think having a focus on that explicit grammar and structure, not just embedded but explicit, can be really valuable. And we know, right, from our current population, pre-K to 12, we know how important that is, and that what they learn in elementary school is going to show up beyond. Sorry, I'm just checking my thing. And then can you just talk a little bit about the budget timeline in terms of reminding us? You had said spring, the budget usually comes out at the end of the year, in terms of just when we expect a decision to be made and when we would expect if there were to be a purchase and implementation.
So I think there are multiple ways to look at this, and now I do, sorry, I don't want to jump in. Go ahead.
Well, when we're preparing the budget, we would have an option for the into reading.
Okay, so you're expecting to have a placeholder estimate
Yes.
in that
Absolutely.
for this current,
Absolutely.
okay, great.
Yeah.
And a
then-
plan for implementation, right? as far
Okay,
as
great.
spring
So
subjects.
then, that will go into the budget. However, since it's still early on, you will continue your work and refining your recommendation. Okay, perfect. That's
So
what
I
I was.
think that was what I was trying to say earlier. It didn't come out well, but it would be a placeholder.
Right.
And not a decision would be made when we get our budget at the end of December. There would be a number that would encompass.
No, that
Not
makes,
rush our
that makes
time.
total
Yes.
sense for planning and
Right.
also for us to continue. I do have to run, I apologize. And I just wanted to say thank you for this. I can talk about it all day. I do hope that there will be an opportunity as we get further into the year and further into the pilots, where perhaps you could bring some of the teachers that are doing it, because I would
We've
really
talked
love
about
to
that.
hear from them. Okay,
would love that.
fantastic.
Mhm.
Thank you all
That's
so much.
on deck.
Yes.
I also am gonna have to leave a little early. Thank you for all of this. I just to kind of expand on that, on the timing. So you're saying you would have a placeholder, but we would not have a recommendation like in December. We'd have the budget, which would have a placeholder, and then you would continue to get feedback and then finally decide. Like, what would the timing be of making that final decision?
Well, we have to give you a number for
Right.
the budget, right? And I would guess that we would look at some different options because whenever we implement a program, we might decide to implement a K-5. We might say that we're going to implement it, certain grade levels at a time, and there would be a different cost to that. And then depending on, what the committee decides and what the feedback is, there may be other options. So
Okay, so when you gave us option 1, option 2, option 3, it could be any of those, but I'm imagining that the budget will have something that would allow us to pursue any of those, right?
Right.
Even if it's
Mhm.
keeping our existing curriculum and adding on some other stuff, which is sort of
Right.
option 3.
right.
And I'm assuming option 1 is probably the most expensive potential, but
Yes.
okay, but
Mhm.
all right, but what would the timing be more like a spring timing when we would actually get the final recommendation, or is that just kind of a flexible work in progress of what you would adapt to or what you would adopt?
What we said was that we would have a recommendation from the team by December.
That's what I remembered.
Yes.
Is that on our agenda,
Mhm.
I believe?
It is.
Mhm.
Okay.
It
This
is.
topic continues to come up on the master agenda.
Right, because I do get a lot of questions from elementary school parents in particular, and especially K through 3 that are doing these pilots that are wondering about it. And so it would be really, really helpful just from a board perspective to be able to maybe address or explain a little bit more or address concerns from parents, because we didn't really have a lot of information going into this to even answer questions that we might get from parents. So it would just be helpful. This is really helpful, this presentation, just to see the differences. For instance, what you showed on like slide 61, that was the first that I had actually had a chance to kind of see how is this actually different.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's where I'm coming from, but thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a few additional follow-ups. In terms of the process, are we, so this, I think this does qualify as new textbooks, new resources. Are we as a board going to be given the opportunity to review that, approve it? When's
Yeah,
that
so
gonna happen?
what is the timeline, do you think, for that?
Well, I think we can talk about that offline, but part of the Board of Ed Curriculum Committee is, I think, to provide advance notice and to kind of timeline that out
Yeah.
together. We would obviously want that to be before the December meeting because we want you to have time to think and give feedback and explore. But I think Sarah and I can probably talk about the logistics of how to set
So
that.
my struggle with this is I don't want to rush a decision, right?
Mhm.
Like I don't want to approve something that has only been in the classrooms for 8 to 12 weeks. Yeah, I think that our budget timing makes this difficult because I don't think it allows for a robust pilot and for us to really understand how it works and, kind of the data of whether it's successful or not. So I'm personally struggling with how do we go about this in the best way and not rushing into something that may or may not be exactly what we need. So,
And truthfully, we won't have all of our data by December.
right.
Even when you think about implementation, there's something that's often commonly referred to as implementation dip, right?
Right.
Like, so because teachers are learning new resources, so we can't, that's going to be difficult to make a decision based on assessments that happen after 8 weeks within this
Right.
resource.
This is Jill.
Hi, Jill.
I'm in agreement. We should put something in the budget, but it's very important, as you pointed out, Sarah, that we not allow that timeline to dictate the timeline of this decision, going through the process correctly and making the right decision are critical. So we will work through the regular board timeline and the committee timelines to make it work. We can always adjust the budget.
Thank you for those supportive comments, Jill. And I would say also that there are many districts that in a very small group with 1, 2, or 3 people selected a resource and just implemented it the following year. The fact that we're taking our time, I think, is reflective of some earlier parts of our conversation that are discussing process over product. The process here has been a very valuable professional learning experience for our staff. And this is, it will be it'd be major commitment moving forward.
Yeah.
So
I
we
would
need
also like
proceed
to
with
understand,
intentionality.
to the point of not rushing, I want to make sure that this is the right program, that we are choosing the right program. And I don't want to be obstinate or seem, whatever. But if we choose not to, if we decide integrating is not what we need and this is not working for us, what happens if we don't get a resource for next September? A different one.
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same question, like, what's the time, like, when is the due date for whatever we need to do on this? What is that, and how do we work backwards from there? And if they're, like, we're putting all our eggs in one basket, it seems. Are there other programs to choose from? What are we doing if we don't like into reading? I have seen negative press out there. I'm sure there's positive, negatives on every single one of these programs, but I have seen some negative stuff out there from other districts who have tested this. So how are we thinking about that?
I mean, that's the bottom line, is that programs don't teach kids, teachers teach. We've looked at all of the resources, and the reason that we submitted a waiver is because we've, felt like we had a comprehensive program. We're continuing to work with the state to ask these very same questions.
Okay.
So your question would probably be my question. We were meant to put this in place by next year.
By statute.
Right, by statute. So that being said, I'm not going to put something in place just because if it doesn't work and we haven't resolved the thoughtful, comprehensive process that we've come to or participated in, then I would advocate that we would find a way just to continue to complete that. My question is to myself and my group and stuff, what happens if the teachers don't select us?
Right.
They did select it, and there's 40-something teachers, our most skilled teachers in reading. I'm going to rely totally on them to bring back a recommendation of what to do or what not to do. I think that's what we should do. And
Yeah.
I'm prepared to have into reading if that's it, but I'm also prepared not to have it if it's not it.
Right.
So that remains to be seen, but we're not going to rush into just implement it.
And I just want to be sure in December, if we decide into reading is what it is, I want your confidence to be high in that. I don't want you just to be choosing it because the state says we have to choose it.
Shouldn't just be an automatic green light. There should be candid feedback from the teachers and
Absolutely.
That's why,
constructive feedback.
that's why we've been so thoughtful with having this actually be a preschool through grade 12 discussion, because we want to think about what happens beyond grade 3. What are our students evidencing and demonstrating as far as needs when they leave 3rd grade that should inform our earlier literacy work. So we have a very comprehensive process, and many teachers and all schools are involved.
And I think so the story that we're going to have to tell when we present the budget and this big line item is maybe we can't actually tell you that this is what we're going to need. And I think that's maybe we as a board understand that, but I think to the outside bodies need to understand that this is a nebulous line. I think it's a tricky.
Yeah.
It's a tricky time.
And like, even, I mean, to Dr. Alley's point, like, it sounds like there's a pretty wide spectrum in terms of like what the implementation of this could look like. And I don't know, has the state given us like explicit guidelines in terms of like what level it needs to be?
No.
So we can, it sounds like there's maybe some wiggle room there.
They've basically given up reviewing programs now and giving feedback.
So.
And we've been asking consistently, how will you progress monitor what districts are doing with the directive that you've given to select an approved program? And they don't have a process in place for that.
As clear as mud.
Yes.
All right. So there's more discussion to be had around this, but thank you
Much
for that. Yeah.
Can I? Yeah. I'm gonna have to leave, but I just, if it's okay, I just had one question about EduPlanet.
go
I
for
know
it.
we haven't done the presentation yet, but just, I was just wondering, I know the expanded licenses is really the purpose of kind of what you're going to go into, but my main question was who would have access? Is it just the teachers or would it be parents too?
So this is actually the shortest presentation of the day, but the punchline here is that really the expansion is about providing access more to our teaching staff. So currently, the license that we have allows for publication of course descriptions in stage 1 on the website for parents. And the slide that was in the summer curriculum and professional deck is already out of date because in the last week, we've updated what is called the blueprint. So if you were to go to, and I plan to navigate this on these slides.
I don't want to rush you. So Amy, you can go ahead with the presentation. I'm going to have to.
Awesome. So I will make this really quick. Everybody understands that UBD is understanding by design. That's the framework with which we write curriculum. EduPlanet is simply the software where we store and house it. So we want to talk a little bit about why EduPlanet, the content and intentions for future use. So the key features are that if we have EduPlanet, we have a comprehensive pre-K-12 curriculum which supports alignment through the district pre-K-12 across the 5 elementary schools and of course the vertical alignment as well. EduPlanet has the standards built into it, so it's supportive of our staff naturally making those connections. There's job embedded professional learning, which is a part of our EduPlanet program and certificate and license at this point. And we want to make sure that there's access and transparency for all stakeholders. There's also a way to analyze the curriculum to see where there are gaps, where we're not maybe addressing certain standards or skills or elements of vision of the graduate. So unit planner is what we have. This is what parents and teachers can see. It's technically stage 1. Learning activities, we have access to this for our administrative team and curriculum writers. The reason why we need to expand is because all administrators need to be able to access the curriculum to be able to support the implementation of the curriculum, and all teachers need to be able to see the current curriculum to ensure reduced variability across classrooms. Within the strategic plan, goal areas 1 and 4 are supported within this work. EduPlanet allows us to have self-paced, asynchronous, and interactive course opportunities for professional learning. So we want to do that with UBD, and in the future, we'd want to do that also with Universal Design for Learning. So we're looking forward to having tenets of UDL also be a part of our curriculum as it's written. This is what the curriculum blueprint looks like now on the website. So when you go into this is actually connected to EduPlanet. What we're trying to do is connect the old parts of the curriculum, because obviously you can't rewrite an entire curriculum preschool through grade 12, all departments in a summer. So this is what's current and new in EduPlanet, and we are looking to sync so that when parents click, if it's nothing there, it brings them to the former part of like the original website. So anyway, if the curriculum has not been updated yet in EduPlanet, there's still access to the current curriculum that's being taught on the website. So the current and intended future use, again, the content and practice standards are how we've been using EduPlanet when we write curriculum. We need to be more explicit about tying vision of the graduate in, especially to the performance tasks in stage 3, how we assess learning. The unit planner is what's currently been used, but we want to get to that curriculum blueprint, which is the bigger idea, the bigger picture of curriculum writing. Currently, we have a very small leadership cohort that has access to the platform. We have some administrators and a handful of curriculum writers. You've heard from the department chairs the volume of curriculum writers and how it's exponentially grown. And that's important because when people are writing curriculum, that's a really critical exercise of professional learning. And we need to have a greater focus on UBD. So when we're onboarding staff, we need to make a greater connection to the curriculum and how this curriculum is taught with the end in mind. So really the expansion is about systemic accessibility for all stakeholders in the system. And we've made great progress in the percentages of curriculum that's been written. I can tell you in the core subject areas with regard to the course descriptions, we're at nearly 100%. There are other areas, for example, like physical education and health, which are less developed. And that's something that, you know, the board will continue to see in curriculum updates and as we propose through the budget curriculum work moving forward.
Okay, so one would assume that there's a budgetary implication into this, and
Yes.
it sounds like this is something, you know, to my layman's eyes, sounds like this is something that all teachers should have now. So
Yes.
is this for upcoming budget, or is this something that you would like to do?
There would be a budget implication for FY26, and I would say in the grand scheme of the budget, it's very nominal. I have
Okay.
the figures for that, and it would be a non-negotiable. We have to have our staff have access to the curriculum.
Right. Okay, so is there any next steps currently that you need the board to opine on, or no?
No, I just think just to understand again the difference between curriculum and EduPlanet, right? EduPlanet is where it's housed. It's not the curriculum process, but it's where it's housed. And it's also an opportunity for professional learning. So just would need the board to opine on the nominal increase in that line.
But not before the budget season, like you're
I don't
fine for
think
now.
it'll be, I don't think there will be
Yeah, and
much
that clarification that you just made was what I was going to ask about, just in terms, because on their website, there's some reference to like creating curriculum on there, which I don't think we should be doing, having a, a website where people are able to do that. I think that's what we all do.
That references
If
our
it's, if
staff.
it's just supposed to
creating
be basically a mapping and housing for it, then that's
Yes,
great. I mean,
yes, that's exactly
obviously
what it
that
is.
will need to be made, someone needs to make sure that's consistent with the actual curriculum
Yeah.
that's been approved and all that, but
Yeah,
otherwise.
and that's one of the reasons why we're looking to develop curriculum throughout the year. Typically in school districts, and I think this has been the experience in Darien Public Schools also in the past, is the bulk of curriculum tends to be written in the summer, right? When 2 weeks between the end of the school year and when the budget closes. That's not a best practice, I would say, because then you can't progress monitor the development of the curriculum and provide feedback to the curriculum writers. So that's a really important part of our work moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Greg? Okay, public comment.
Good morning. If anyone in person or online would like to participate in public comment, please approach the podium or use the raised hand icon and wait to be recognized. Please state your name and address for the record and note that you will have up to 3 minutes to comment. We have nobody in person and no raised hands at this time.
All right, I will take a motion